Hi everybody, I'm Jack and this is Raw Tropical Living. Thanks for joining me again today. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. It's been a nice one here. It's been raining a little bit this morning, but the sun looks like it's going to come out, so I thought I'm going to go to the beach in a little bit, so I'd do a video first. I was doing a little reading this morning. I think I told you a few videos back, or I've mentioned it in a video that I've been reading, Becoming Raw. And I was doing some reading this morning, and I'm reading about calcium, and found some interesting. Now, I didn't find some interesting stuff. Some of the stuff, I mean, you know, there's just so much about our diet to take into account out there that it's just never ending. I mean, there's always something. So I've read this information before, and I know a good bit of it, but I just got it, got it represented this morning. It was presented in a good way. Which just makes me think like, okay, I have to make a few little adjustments and watch for this and watch for that, because all calcium, like, it has a lot to do, our calcium has a lot to do with what we're absorbing. Like, we can be taking in a lot of calcium from sources, but depending on different things, we're not absorbing all this calcium, and some of the things we put into our body actually leach calcium out of the bones. So this is a pretty important one, because especially, bone health as we get older. Well, bone health's important our whole life, but as we get older, it's especially more important. So let's take a look at a little bit of what I found this morning about calcium that you may or may not know. Like I say, just always sharing what I'm doing. Okay, adult daily recommended intake is about 1,000 milligrams per day, and that goes up to about 1,200 milligrams after 50. They mentioned this, and they've been talking about this a lot. And here's another reason. Now it's starting to it made sense to me before, because it just instinctively it made sense, but now I'm starting to understand the mentality of eating plenty of food, because another negative of not eating enough calories is we're just not, with eating a raw vegan diet, we have to eat a lot of food to get the proper level of all these nutrients, minerals, etc. And it always seems to be, from everything I'm reading on results and stuff, it always seems to be when they test different groups or they do different studies, the people that have lower calories are always deficient. Always deficient. Just by getting plenty of calories, you're just, there's a lot of things, there's low amounts of nutrients and minerals in, but if we eat a lot of them, or if we eat different sources, they add up. But anyhow, another reason, those with the lowest caloric intakes were particularly low in many bone-building nutrients. A typical advantage of raw diets is that sodium intakes tend to be low and potassium intakes high. And these factors give some protection against drains on calcium reserves. Just a quote they had in this one too: if people eat a very small amount of food, causing them to be very lean and underweight, they are likely to have trouble with their bones. This is true of people following any diet. So low calorie is just not a good thing. Findings from a small study in St. Louis, Missouri give a mixed message. The bad news is that bone mass measured at critical areas in 18 people who had followed a raw vegan diet for an average of 3.6 years proved to be significantly lower than that of a control group of people following standard Western diets. Calcium intakes on the raw diets were 50 to 60% of the daily recommended intake. The good news from the lab test is that these raw foodists were not losing bone mass faster than the control group. They did not have indicators of osteoporosis, and they were getting adequate vitamin D through sun exposure to aid in calcium absorption. So why do we need this calcium? Just a little breakdown if you're not familiar with calcium and what it does. Calcium is best known for its structural role in making bones and teeth hard. About 1% of the calcium in the body has important non-structural functions such as blood clotting, preventing blood loss after an injury, muscle relaxation, nerve cell message transmission, and the regulation of cell metabolism. Alright, now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Now here are some of the sources, the dietary sources of calcium, and we'll talk a little bit about the supplements. Calcium is abundant in plant foods. Now I want you to listen close to this, because this is one I knew and I need to kind of switch one green for another. Calcium is abundant in plant foods such as almonds, fresh and dried fruits, seeds, and a wide assortment of vegetables, particularly low oxalate greens such as bok choy, broccoli, dandelion greens, kale, mustard greens, Napa cabbage, turnip greens, and watercress. And the reason, the low oxalate greens, bok choy, broccoli, and kale contain calcium that is extremely well absorbed by our bodies in the range of 40 to 61%. That's kale, compared to absorption rates of 30 to 32% from cow's milk and tofu. Now, I'll have to look into, and I'm not going to sit in here and try to explain oxalate, what exactly oxalate levels are, but here's the difference, and this is from me. I eat a lot of spinach. From high oxalate greens such as beet greens, spinach, and Swiss chard and rhubarb, we only absorb 5 to 8% of the calcium present. So that is something I'd actually kind of forgotten a little bit, that the spinach wasn't as easily as absorbable as some of the other things. And you know, I live pretty heavily on spinach, so that just made me, as soon as I read that this morning, I'm like, okay, I have to change the balance between, like I buy my greens on Wednesdays and I always buy spinach and kale and other things. I had some, God, what am I trying to say? I had some, had kale, spinach, I had bok choy last week, and I have arugula. Now, I don't know about any calcium in arugula, they're not mentioning arugula, but I will have to, I know I can get bok choy, so I'm going to look more into bok choy, and I will be looking more to eat more broccoli. I eat broccoli, but I eat more kale. I mean, I eat more cauliflower, to be honest with you. But also, too, that means getting in a lot of food, because while we can get 1,000 milligrams of calcium from 11 cups of kale, now I can't imagine in the course of a day, that'd be a lot. 11 cups of kale, and absorb it even, and you can absorb it better than cow's milk. That's a lot of calcium, that's a lot of kale to consume. Another way we might choose, now see, you can break it down a little bit. Another way we might choose to get our day's supply of calcium is from 3 oranges, a very large salad with 3 cups each of kale, Napa cabbage, and romaine lettuce, 3 tablespoons of sesame tahini in a salad dressing, and 1/2 cup of almonds, plus 5 figs. Now that's a little bit, that's probably a little bit higher in fat than I would go in a day. I don't eat that many almonds, so I'm going to have to rely more on the oranges, and probably eating the oranges as opposed to just drinking them, and the kale and the bok choy. I got bok choy, so I'm going to have to up the bok choy and the broccoli. Calcium supplements can be a wise choice to top up your intake if you have difficulty consuming enough calcium from foods. Blah, blah, blah. To maximize absorption, use a supplement that includes vitamin D. That is, if you're going to take a supplement. I'm not going to get into supplements because I'm not going to supplement. I don't think I'm going to need to supplement calcium, so you'll have to look into that if you don't think you're getting enough calcium in your diet, or if you're not getting enough that you can use in your diet. To have the absorption, you definitely have to have the vitamin D. So if you're living, like, see, that's where it starts getting a little tricky with some of this stuff, because like one thing depends on the other. Like you might, if you're somewhere, let's say for instance you're up in the States, in the northern parts of the States, Canada, or somewhere in Europe or wherever, where you're in a winter, where it's winter and you're cold and you're not getting out, you could be getting low on vitamin D levels, but you could also be getting low on calcium. You could be thinking you're getting plenty of calcium, enough calcium, but the lack of the vitamin D is throwing you off balance on the calcium. So, you know, there's always something that's dependent on the other. I mean, I'm just like, sometimes this gets a bit overwhelming. I was talking with somebody this morning, and I told them that I just had to step back a little bit. This was just reading. I read now. But I had to step back because I can get obsessive, and I got on this research kick to where every weekend I was sitting, you know, I'd finish my work during the week, and I work on my stuff, my projects during the week, but on the weekends, I was just like full on working, you know, and researching and planning out videos and studying and stuff like that, and I was getting a little bit of burnout. You know, I started twitching, I started flashing back to school. I never liked school. I like learning, but I just never liked school. But anyhow, that's something important to think about, because the calcium, I mean, you know, the calcium for the bone health is key. Because, you know, when you get older, you break that hip, and there's some people that come back from it, but the kind of person that's going to break their hip because they're deficient in calcium is probably going to be the type of person that doesn't recover well from a broken hip, other broken bones, and what have you. Like I say, that, you know, I'm trying to eat more. I'm trying to bulk up a little bit more for reasons other than just some sort of vanity or looking, you know. I'm just getting more and more, you know, it's always like I hear people talking about being underweight in a lot of this stuff I'm reading about from the standpoint of how it affects your health. And yes, we want to be lean, but there's just, you know, when we're underweight, and that's what I felt like I was for a while. I feel like I'm getting to be a healthier expression of myself now. I would love if I could finally settle at about 165 solid. I'm going to guess right now, because I don't have a scale, you know, down here. I've jumped on one in the drugstore that's, I don't know how accurate it is, and I usually weigh myself during the middle of the day. And I don't think it's very accurate. Anyway, I'd have to guess myself at maybe about 156, 57-ish. So I'd love to get to about 165 solid. Because, you know, I don't know, we may just need it for different reasons. Like I say, so we get all our minerals and nutrients in. I don't know, I just think there's something about not having that super frail body. That's kind of another subject. That's not so much about the calcium. But anyhow, check this out further on your own, and be aware of your calcium, because it's a very important mineral. One of the most important minerals, I would have to say. Anyhow, I hope you like this one. If you like it, give me a thumbs up. Hope you'll subscribe to the channel, and hope you have a wonderful week coming up. I love you guys. Peace.